Welcome. My name is Tyler Nowens, and I'm a life coach. And our channel is called Life Coach Live. And I'm here today with my good friend and associate, Paul Heron, who's another brilliant life coach. And we're partners in crime and doing these live broadcasts a couple times a week. And we really want to, our shared vision is really to support aspiring life coaches. Life coaches, uh, people that are called, that have a higher calling or have a kind of a purpose driven uh, inspiration to serve as a life coach, which is what has brought Paul and I together. And we've been through a number of obstacles on our journey towards fulfilling our vision so far as life coaches. And part of our calling is to support newer life coaches in getting established as a life coach and knowing what steps to take so that they can, start reaching their goals. How are you today, Paul?
I'm very well, thanks, Tyler. It's fantastic to be back again. I'm super excited about this one, to be honest. I know this is a little bit of a framework that you've put together yourself, but something that I think is hugely aligned with everything that we're looking to do with this channel and the future plans that we have to be able to help up and coming coaches, go through some of the or navigate through some of the challenges that are inevitable in many ways. What's coming up for me, just seeing these slides since you sent them through over the last couple of days is, this whole emotional intelligence thing, just the way we deal with our emotions and feelings. And, there's a distinction between sort of picking out the thing that we're going to do next, but allowing ourselves to be able to actually follow through and take the action. And that's the thing that's coming up with me. And I know that I've felt a lot of resistance to doing various different things over the years. And I think I'm excited to see where this conversation heads, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, and you've touched on that. And you know, these this presentation, the slides that I have are like what I've done is I've really tried to simplify it and boil it down because I think that you and I have both experienced, and I'll just speak for myself and I'll get your thoughts after, um, this sense of kind of overwhelm, at times. Um, Having this vision of being a life coach and all that entails building a business. um, what am I supposed to do? There's so many moving parts and aspects with social media and email marketing and websites and branding, and there's just, and that's all over and above the actual work of being a life coach and working with clients. That presents its own obstacles and challenges themselves. So this framework is really, it's applicable to people that want to be a life coach and build their business as a life coach, but it's also a framework that life coaches can work with in their own life, on themselves, and it's transferable. So this framework is kind of like, think of it as a master key, right? you know it's overwhelming when you have 100 different keys and 100 different locks and you're trying to figure out which key goes in which lock. But if you have a master key, that one key transcends all the individual different keys and locks, and it works and it can be applied to everything. And So that's I don't know where that analogy came from. I honestly have never thought of it before, but and this is the secret right there. That's the secret, is stepping forward into something new that's unknown and trusting. It's a little bit like jumping out of the airplane and trusting that the parachute is gonna catch you, you know? And so, yeah, I'm just going to pause and just reconnect with you there, Paul. How are you doing over there with so far?
Awesome. I love that analogy about the master key and the parachute, actually, because I think that's what that is the thing that comes up for me. It's the belief that we have what it takes, that we are enough, that we don't need any more, that we have everything we need right now to decide what we're going to do next and take action accordingly. And having something like this just to refer back to, I think, can be something that's really powerful. So, as I said, I'm super excited to have this conversation today.
Yeah, and what you've touched on, Paul, is the first part, which is the being part. So let's I'm going to give some context for this presentation, which I've titled Three Powers of Being. And the next three slides, each slide is going to be one of the three powers. But what's important on this particular slide is simply being. And what you just spoke about was trusting in that who I am and what I am is enough as I am. I don't need another title. I don't need another training. I don't need this. And it's not that there's anything wrong with getting more training and practicing and doing all these things, but it's a reversal in how we go. It's a reversal in the why we're seeking training and practice. It's not because our cup is half full. I mean, it's not because our cup is half empty. It's because our cup is half full, you know? And most of if we're unconscious of our own worthiness and our own fullness and our own beingness, then we are trying to fill that void with stuff. And that could be, buying material stuff to make us feel better, you know, uh, all of that sort of thing. So, really, the three powers of being belong to a power source. And we are the power source. Who we are is the power source. And the three powers are simply ingredients in the recipe. And with those three ingredients, we can do and accomplish anything that we envision.
Yeah, awesome, Tyler. What's coming up for me there is, this idea of being, and I'm probably someone who wants to work out how I can put this into practice and to apply some of these things. And for me, it is about stepping back and almost like decluttering. Because I can recall years ago, coming out of a coaching course and absolutely feeling like I needed more. I needed more education. I needed more practice. I needed more. I wasn't enough. I wasn't ready. But the more that we can just find a way to accept that, we are at the level we're at, whatever level we find ourselves, even if we're at the very, very beginning, we're enough to take those next steps that we need to take. Which is really challenging because we look around us and we see everybody else. We make comparisons to others. It's particularly difficult for coaches because in the main we're very ethical. We don't want to be selling something that we're not believing that we're capable of delivering. And it becomes a really big challenge for us to just accept that we have value to be able to provide to the people that we are having conversations with. And, continuously just coming back to this place of acceptance, accepting where we are, knowing and trusting and believing that we have value within ourselves that is well and truly worthy of helping the people that are around us. So, yeah, I just think this is a really powerful conversation and something that we can use as a bit of a tool in itself, just to keep, referencing and decluttering, removing some of this distraction that gets in the way, and just keep coming back or keep trying to find a way to come back to this place of just accepting and trusting that you're enough to do what needs to be done next right now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's well said. And what you shared about is, looking outside of ourselves or comparing ourselves to others, and it's your being actually knows at a deep level what to do naturally. And it takes practice in order to establish a conscious connection with that inner power. You know, uh, it's coming to mind this book that Tony Robbins wrote years and years ago called Awaken the Giant Within. I've got it on my bookshelf. I've skimmed through it. I haven't read it, but that's besides the point. The title is referring to something within us. You can call it a giant. You can call it a beingness. You can call it greatness. You can call it truth or light or love or awareness or consciousness. It doesn't matter what you call it. And right now, I'm just calling it your being, yourself, your higher self, who you are. And so this higher self, this higher being, who you are, is the power source. It's the cause. It's the solution. It's what we're actually seeking. And it's a reversal because just the title, Three Powers of Being. Well, at first, the ego wants to know, what are these three powers? Maybe if I know what they are, I can understand them and use them to get what I want. Right? It's very tempting. That is actually what our biggest problem is. Right there. That's the biggest problem. Because what we really want is not to get something. What we really want is the power to give something. That's what we want. But that's not what most of us are running off of subconsciously. We're not totally conscious of that. And it's not our fault. It's the way we've been conditioned culturally, the world we live in. Everything is being thrown at us. Get this, get that. Once you have this, then you'll be happy. And the idea of the inner giant or the beingness is being the source. It is where your happiness comes from. And when we're established in that place of beingness, then we utilize those three powers, not to get something, but to give something.
Yep, I love it, Tyler. And that's as I said, I would probably be thinking about it more practically, but it's exactly the same thing as what I mentioned. Where a lot of us we're needing to be levels down the road. If we can just find a way to get here, things will be okay, and we can do the things that we need to be doing. But I think it's very much our ability to be able to just trust ourselves with the process. With everything from our ability to make decisions, to be able to follow through, to be able to be courageous even when we don't feel like taking an action. I think it's just such a powerful thing to be able to reflect back on, and to be able to help us put things into perspective, and just to keep remembering that we are enough just as we are. That's the thing that keeps on coming back up for me. And yeah, I love that book, by the way. I've got that on my bookshelf as well behind me, and I have taken the time to read it, and there's a powerful message there. Absolutely.
Yeah. 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 I'm gonna. There's stuff I haven't talked to you about it, but I know I've found in Tony's early years, he actually went to see my teacher that I was introduced to when I was 8, back in the early 80s. And he actually went to the same teacher in the early 80s. And so um, and so I understand where that title of the book comes from, because it's actually the similar message to the teacher that we've seen. So, and that message is being said in countless different ways by countless different people throughout the centuries. So this isn't a new message. It's an old message, and it keeps reappearing because it's a timeless message. It's applicable and real and as true and as powerful today as it was 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. Okay. So that beingness, that inner giant, if you will, that is already fulfilled. It's already enough. And it's utilizing the three powers. The first power being the power of feeling. And the power of feeling mostly is it arises out of our being. So the being is the cause or the source, because your feelings come from somewhere. They arise from somewhere. They have to come from somewhere. Okay? So they arise out of our beingness. And the biggest problem with feeling is that it's subject to duality, which means it's either a positive energy or a negative energy. And oftentimes it's somewhere in between. It's neither good or bad. The power of feeling actually is more of a vertical spectrum than a horizontal spectrum. So, in other words, there's only really so many feelings that a human being faces. there's different degrees of those feelings. And so that's what I mean by vertical. There's the highest of the high, and there's the lowest of the low. And there's highs and lows at varying degrees in between. And most of what drives us in our lives is because we want to feel good. It's so simple. Why do we want to win $1 million? Why do we want to win the lottery? Oh, that would feel awesome. You know, how free I would feel, how free I would be, right? And it's important to put your being first, because your being is not subject to the highs and the lows and the plus and the minus, the negative and positive energies. Your being precedes the feelings. So the feelings are more like an object of our perception. The perceiver is the subject. It's who we are. A feeling is just an object of perception, subject to plus and minus. Now, the problem again is we are not identified with our being. Our being is hidden from us. We are primarily identified with our feeling, not our being. And so, therefore, we are subject to the highs and lows. And, you know, it's great when we're on the highs, but there seems to be a growing number of people on antidepressants in society because of the lows that they're kind of stuck in, you know? And it's all based on the power of feeling as simply me. The root feeling is just me. There's a me, I exist. But again, that's just a feeling. But everything that we think and do and feel is applied to that me. I did this. I feel this. I am so angry. I hate you. It's always rooted in me. And even the me is an object of our perception. And that's where the freedom comes from in your being, is you realize that I'm not who I am, what I am, is beyond an object of perception and is free. Because any object in perception is subject to duality, the plus and the minus. And powers, you can think of powers as energy, right? So there's positive energy and negative energy. And your beingness is, if we align the power of feeling with our beingness, then it is a positive energy. It's a positive power. Because our beingness is already full and complete. You know, you want to achieve greatness, be grateful. Fill your being with gratitude. Everything is already complete. Okay? Feel, think, and act from that place, if you can. Seek to serve. So we'll get into the other powers. Thanks for holding the space here for me, Paul, to share this.
No problems at all. I think it's fascinating listening to your perspective on this, and it's just makes a lot of sense. You know, what comes up for me is this, you know, and I'm just kind of thinking about this now, putting the pieces together, I guess. But, you know, what comes up for me is, you know, if we're purely looking at the emotional side or the feeling side, you know, I can clearly see that, you know, often that's not in our best interest. You know, if we're purely chasing short-term gratification, for example, that might lead to a short-term feeling well, but it's just not aligned with who it is that we truly want to be. And I kind of, what's also coming up is that we are, in many cases, motivated by moving away from pain or seeking pleasure. But I think what's coming up for me is we need to do that in a way that's aligned with who we are and what it is that we want to create. And sometimes those steps in the direction we want to be taking, that's not always going to be comfortable feelings that are popping up. So sometimes it is understanding that to step into the direction we want to be taking isn't taking the safe, comfortable, easy route. And if that is aligned with your being, then I guess, I haven't really heard it described this way, but I guess that's a net energy plus boost for us, particularly once we've been able to get out the other side of those actions and the ability to be able to reflect back on achievement and growth. That's what comes up for me anyway.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. You've made a lot of great points there. Because what I'm kind of talking about is a fairly universal and metaphysical, and the challenge is to be able to, uh, as you say, be practical and apply it, and um, you know that feeling of discomfort, or the feeling um, of resistance or fear, is really what is preventing us. And I'll tell you, a lot of those feelings arise from the unknown, the uncertainty, and the safety in security, and the comfort. And that is, and eventually that safety and security and comfort becomes uncomfortable, because we have a higher calling that we are suppressing and ignoring. And so, we have to face our feelings, and we have to develop that emotional intelligence, and we have to learn to be with them, and to understand them, and to accept them, and to take action, as you say, Paul, despite how we are feeling. And feelings are subject to change. Feelings have a beginning, middle, and end. And you can go from despair to elation at the drop of a hat. It's fascinating. Um, yeah. So that's the first power. I would say it's the innermost power. I would call it also the causal power. It is, and I would also say it for the most part is in our unconscious. So it's causing us to do and think and behave and not do. Primarily, it's the primary cause, uh, and we're unconscious of it. We don't realize why we're doing what we're doing, and it's because we're not aware or conscious of the innermost feeling, where that's actually coming from. So now, out of feeling, now I'm working from the inside out on this. Okay? So I would say, just to add to this, we are primarily conditioned to work from the outside in. So the reversal of this is, primarily we think of the world as being the truth and reality, and we are all physical objects in the world, and that's who we are. But the next step inward is how we think, the power of thinking. And the truth of the matter is that the world and who we are is actually only determined by what we think it is. That's powerful. If we think the world is a great and safe place to be, then it is. If we think the world is a dangerous place and we have to fight for our survival, then that's what it is. And they use the word mindset. It's a bit of a buzzword in coaching. And you can predominantly focus on your fears and worries and anxieties, or you can focus on your vision. You can focus on feeling good about yourself. You can, and there's practices for the mind. I mean, thinking or having thoughts is really just the mind. Thoughts and thinking is just synonymous with the mind. And, there's some practices, because the mind is like oh gosh, I don't even know what the proper analogy for the mind is. The mind can just lead you to heaven or lead you to hell. It can conjure up all kinds of fantasies and, dreams. It all takes place in the mind. And really, the mind has become, I would say, the central governing power of our reality and existence. And when we've talked about the cause, your source of being, and the first power being feeling, I would say that the second power of thinking actually should take backseat to the deeper causal feeling. So the thinking is in alignment with your being, with the giant within, with the inner giant. The inner giant feels good about themselves. The inner giant feels powerful. The being is the power source, is the source of energy that fuels your feelings and your thoughts and your actions. And your thinking is really just to support your vision. It's to support you in thinking through the practical day-to-day aspects of your life. And most of us are looking for answers up here. We're trying to figure it all out. We're trying to get the solution so that we can get what we want and we can be secure and have everything controlled, so I don't have to ever feel vulnerable or scared or, uh, the mind in and of itself, Paul, is extremely powerful. And the practices of self-awareness and meditation and contemplation, what they do is they begin to free us from the control and confines of the mind. And, the mind, like the heart, so the heart being where the feelings come from, and we talked about the feelings they're more vertical. There's only so many feelings that we feel in life, from the negative to the positive. Well, the thoughts are also subject to positive and negative. You can have positive thoughts and negative thoughts, but think of the amount of different types of thoughts you can have. Think of it.
I find this fascinating, to be honest. You hear those statistics around the number of thoughts that we have a day. I don't, roughly 50,000 thoughts a day, say. Um,
How many?
50,000, I've read. 50,000 thoughts a day. Now, I think a lot of those thoughts are sort of thought patterns. They repeat themselves. I don't know how many unique thoughts we have, but, you know, from my point of view, I know that, if we take notice of every single thought we have, this constant chatter would just drive us mad in the end. And I think it's really interesting what you're saying and getting at here, that what I'm hearing, I guess, is that we are not our thoughts, even though sometimes we might think that we are, which is a really powerful realization. I also loved what you mentioned earlier as well about, we have the power to influence how we experience any given moment. Two different people can experience exactly the same moment in time, the same day, same experience, and have vastly different. One might be completely positive, one completely negative, completely different views on the descriptions of what they're describing they experienced. And I think at some level we do have an opportunity, or we do have ways where we can start to reframe our focus. There's a bit of a Tony Robbins theme today, but what does he say? He's got a famous quote that says something to the effect, I'll probably misquote it, but something to the effect of, where our focus goes, our energy flows. And if we are able to reframe some of the negative thought patterns to more positive outcomes, or more positive viewpoints, then we're able to sort of work on shifting the way we perceive ourselves at the identity level. We can start to look for evidence of us living in line with those values and being more positive. I just think it's a fascinating conversation, because we all, this is getting to what prevents us from doing the things that we know is our calling. I love this conversation, Tyler. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thank you and it's great. Your enthusiasm for this stuff is terrific, and you know, everything you said is bang on, and there's a lot there. The power of the mind, and how easily we can become distracted. The mind. Um, I've heard people over the years, they can't sleep because they can't turn their mind off. You know, and people obsess and they get worried, and they play out all these different scenarios in their mind about what could happen in this, and really, again, it's letting go of all of that stuff and allowing the mind to kind of soften and become still. And that's, one of the main techniques for harnessing the power of mind is meditation. So think of it as, you know, uh, I gave the analogy years ago to one of my employees was, when you go into a grocery store, you can walk up and down every aisle and you can look at everything that's available, and you can choose anything you want, right? Oh, I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to take that. And it's the same with the mind and your thoughts. You actually have the power to choose, not always what you think, because that's a different uh, the mind is built to think. It's like a thinking machine. The only time it really stops is if we practice meditation or if we're in deep sleep. You know, even when we're in lighter sleep, the mind is still creating and conjuring up all kinds of things. But we have the power to at least say, I choose to believe that thought or not. And I think one of the biggest problems about the mind is that the powerlessness, that the problem that we have is that whatever thought we have in our minds, we believe. Every single thought, and you're talking about 50,000 thoughts, we believe it. And the only reason why we believe it is just because it's so close to us that we're identified with it. Like what you said, it's powerful to know that we're not our minds. Well, most of us are our minds. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because in truth, we're not. Our mind is just thoughts. It's not who we are. Our being is who we are. I think of a human being, okay? I think of feeling, thinking, and acting, the three powers in this talk, as our human part. The being part is the one that transcends the humanness. It's more of the universal. If somebody says being, I think the thing that they identify with the most, they think of your body. But the being is more not physical. So the body is what performed the power of action. That's what we're going to talk about next. That's physical. That happens at the physical. As soon as you now move into the mind, you're no longer working in the physical realm. Thoughts are not physical. Yet look at the power that they have. As soon as you go deeper into the feeling, the causal power, again, not physical. Yet look at the driving power that it has over the physical, the non-physical thinking, the power that it has, how it affects the physical reality. So those human parts, so human is hues, the three hues of man. And those three hues are feeling, thought, and action. And they belong to the heart, they belong to the mind, and they belong to the body. The being part is also non-physical. It would be more about, and I refrain from using the word spiritual because it has a religious connotation, but the word spiritual means essential. Like the spirit of something is the essence of something. So the essence of your humanity is your beingness. That's the essence. And some people call it spirituality. The way to know your beingness is often through what they call spiritual practice or mindfulness or self-awareness, and beingness, just before we move on, beingness is really just awareness. That's all that it is. Your beingness is just pure awareness. So it's the cause and the source. It is what knows. And it is what knows that you don't know something. It knows that you don't know, and it knows that you know, or it knows what you think you know. So we say, my body, my mind, my thoughts, my feelings. Who is this me or my that the feelings, thoughts, and body belong to? What is it? Right? And it's such a basic question. And we talked about it in previous things about identity. Who am I or what am I? It's such a fundamental, basic question, yet we never really think about it. We never really ask ourselves. We never really contemplate it. We never really meditate upon it. Who am I really? Where am I? What am I? Wow, thoughts. Wow, feelings. Memories, beliefs, all that kind of stuff. We're none of that stuff. We are just being in the pure awareness in the here and now. Paul, did you have any other things before we get into the power of action? Do you have any other things you want to add?
I'm just in this particular topic today. I'm just sitting back listening to everything that you've got to say on it, and I think it's a really powerful conversation, and it's got me thinking. And I'm sure anyone who stumbles across this video, or anyone who's here live, I'm not sure who's watching. I'm sure there is so much that most of us can take away from this, because it gets back to that idea of really understanding ourselves and who we are, exactly what you were just saying there.
And you know what's so exciting about this as a life coach, Paul, is that when you understand this about yourself, and it's not something that I'm asking anyone to believe in. I'm asking people to find out for themselves if what we're talking about is true for them or not. And if it is true, then you don't have to believe in it. It's the sun's shining today. It is what it is. And what's amazing about it, Paul, is that for me, this is the foundation of my ability and my confidence and my certainty as a life coach. I'm more confident and certain about this than I am about, making a cold call and having that initial conversation, or, coming to a video and recording and all that kind of stuff. Like all of that, I get nervous and I've got resistance and I'm afraid, but at the innermost level, and that's, I like so value the ability and space to be able to share this with you, Paul, and our listeners. So, thanks. Yeah. So, where are we now? So this is the thing, I think, that where most of us spend our lives focused on. What do I do? What should I do? What shouldn't I do? What do I feel like doing? And action is really the only thing that the body can do. The only thing your body can do is perform an action. And, this is the third power. So if we're working from the inside out, as opposed from the outside in, so the outside in, if something happens externally in the world, then I react. I don't act. So from the outside in, I'm always in reaction mode. So something always external to me is dictating my actions, but I call them reactions. And I think that, most of our life is lived in reaction mode, and there is a sense of helplessness that comes from that. Like we don't feel like we have any control because we're always reacting to something outside of ourselves, something external. And from the inside out, if we understand what we are, if we have a vision, if we are feeling worthy, if we are feeling positive, if we're feeling that that is in alignment, our thoughts therefore arise and spring out of it. And we're here to, so the power of action, if your power of action is aligned with what we've been talking about, it's coming from the inside out, then really all that's left for us to do is just serve. That's all that it's not. And the problem is, from the outside in, how we be conditioned, we don't act to serve. We act only if we are going to get something. Well, why would I do that? You know, what? Why should I? What's in it for me? You know, what we want to do is we want to act out of a place from that inner giant of empowerment. We want to act in alignment with our higher purpose. That is the purpose of life. That's what's in it for you. You get to live and experience a fulfilled and purposeful life. That's what you get. What happens as a result of that? What the fruits are of the action? They are going to be what they are. Learn to accept the good with the bad, because it's not all going to be roses. You may want something to work out to be good, but that's not how life is, you know? But at least we're working in alignment with that higher purpose and vision that we have in our life. And that is in and of itself the reward.
I love it, Tyler. It's a complete shift in perspective for myself. I think in my life, in my coaching, there's elements of all this that sort of come into it, but this is just looking at this through a completely different lens for myself. And what's coming up for me is, if I'm looking at the three powers, how we potentially get in our own way. And, how I'm visualizing it anyway is potentially there's different levels that we can be acting in each of those powers. And I think, based on what you're saying there, the closer you go to the center, if you can work your way outwards, increasing your ability to do each of those powers at a slightly higher level, in many ways the results will look after themselves. We all kind of know that, tackling a huge goal before we're emotionally ready to take on that doesn't work. And this framework kind of paints that picture of why it doesn't work and why we're not ready to actually do what we know is required. So that's sort of what's coming up for me there.
So it's so for you to just be able to receive this and share so beautifully the way you summarize that is just, it really, I'm just grateful to be able to share in this conversation with you. And so I feel like I've been at a big buffet, and I feel like I'm pretty full. Yeah. So I don't really have it. I just want to thank anyone who's stayed with us this far, and I'm excited about the future, Paul, and how we can support and serve other aspiring life coaches. And I'm excited about the community that's going to arise as a result of this work that we're doing. And I'm really excited to have another conversation with you I think on Wednesday next week. Normally we do Tuesdays and Thursdays, but next week we're going to do a Wednesday and Thursday instead.
Yeah, slight change to the schedule, but yeah, Wednesday, Thursday next week. I'm curious to ask if anyone is listening to this, how can someone, if someone does want to explore this further, where can we direct people?
Well, I mean, it all starts with a conversation, and um, I think we need to make our contact information more available. We have a website, lifecoach.live or dash live.com, and our contact information should be on there. But of course, you can just leave a comment or message us in the description below. Um, if you're inspired to do so, like.
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome, Tyler. That's been a fascinating talk today. I know personally there's so much that I can take away from this and hopefully reflect on over the coming days. And I look forward to touching on these topics more and more as we get into this.
Sounds great, Paul. Look forward to it. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.